Well, the last 24 hours have been some of the most consequential that we have had in months. We first heard from the current Attorney General, Merrick Garland, that no one is above the law, that he is open to prosecuting former President Donald Trump. But then, in addition to that, we learned, based on a very interesting report from the Washington Post, that Donald Trump is currently under criminal investigation by the Justice Department. This was the question. Is the Justice Department criminally investigating Donald Trump? Have they paid attention to the January 6th committee or to what's going on in Georgia or to whatever else and done their own investigation and determined this is worthy, not necessarily of charges, but of criminal investigation? And the news that broke over the last 24 hours is that the answer is yes. We're going to look at both of these things. I was going to lead with Garland, but Garland being open to prosecuting Trump is irrelevant if there's no probe. It now has been revealed that there is indeed a probe. Washington Post report, Justice Department investigating Trump's actions in January 6th criminal probe. People familiar with the probe said investigators are examining the former president's conversations and have seized the phone records of top aides. Understand, this is already historic. It is not typical that a president leaves office and then is under federal criminal investigation. Now, it may go to absolute nothing. This investigation may end up in the toilet, flushed 10 to 15 times. But this is already an unprecedented and unique situation. The Justice Department is investigating Trump's actions as part of its criminal probe of efforts to overturn the 2020 election, according to 4 people familiar with the matter. Prosecutors who were questioning witnesses before a grand jury, including 2 top aides to Vice President Pence, have asked in recent days about conversations with Trump, his lawyers, and others in his inner circle who sought to substitute Trump allies for certified electors from some states Joe Biden won. This is the fake elector scam. The prosecutors have asked hours of detailed questions about meetings Trump led in December of 2020 and January 2021. His pressure campaign on Pence to overturn the election, and what instructions Trump gave his lawyers and advisors about fake electors and sending electors back to the states, the people said. Some of the questions focus directly on the extent of Trump's involvement in the fake elector effort led by his outside lawyers, including John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani. This is major, folks. And it appears that a lot of the focus is on the fake elector scheme. The belief among some legal experts is that that's probably the easiest one to prove, but it is all very much related generally to Trump's attempt to overthrow the government and to install himself, the guy who did not win, the illegitimate. Wouldn't even, to say an illegitimate president, he wasn't the president. He didn't win. The article goes on to say, Justice Department investigators in April received phone records of key officials and aides in the Trump administration, including Mark Meadows as chief of staff. That effort is another indicator of how expansive the January 6th probe had become well before the hearings in June and July. This is another really important question, or answer, I guess we would better say. We were wondering, not only was there a probe, but did the probe only start because of the January 6th committee hearings? And it appears that the answer is no. There was actually a criminal probe of Trump that started well before that. What do we know about some of the buildup to all of this? Well, Jacqueline Alemany, who works for the Washington Post and was part of breaking this story, appeared on MSNBC and talked about it. Listen to this.
That's exactly right, Willie. We've reported that prosecutors who have recently brought in people like Greg Jacobs and Mark Short and potentially more. We just, people we might not be aware of just yet, but people who were very close to Mike Pence had firsthand accounts and were witness to the pressure campaign being applied on him to overturn the results of the election.
Indeed.
And we're also in the room for other meetings involving some of the constitutional schemes being put forth by Trump allies, people like John Eastman. Before the president, they were asked about those interactions. They were asked about meetings in December of 2021 and January of 2020, December of 2020 and January of 2021. We also know that they were asked specifically about the pressure being put on Mike Pence, according to sources. And we also know that these phone records that have been newly reported and obtained by the Justice Department included phone records from top Trump aides and Mark Meadows as well. Someone else who was also in the room for a lot of these really explosive and meetings that have recently garnered a lot of scrutiny by.
All right. So the point here that I can only make a limited number of times in an hour program, but I think needs to be made is we all have been some degree desensitized by these last many years. And I include myself in that. But this is not normal. This is extraordinary. These are extraordinary times that we are living in. The former president is under criminal investigation by the following administration's Justice Department. Now, what could be the possible crimes? I've been reading up on this morning as a non-lawyer who spoke to some lawyers. There are three possibilities. The easiest to prove would likely be conspiracy to defraud the United States. This would be over the fake electors. Sending fake electors would be committing a fraud, as Trump says, on the United States. Other possible crimes: obstruction of an official proceeding. Now, there are lots of variations of this, but the one being looked at by the January 6th committee seems to be 1512C, which theoretically carries up to 20 years in prison. I don't expect that that's ever going to be Trump's future, partially because he won't live 20 years. And then also seditious conspiracy is possible. But again, when anything with the word sedition in it, the bar to prove criminal intent is a difficult one to overcome. And it's sort of related to why I know I've said this before. You don't often see perjury charges, even though people do lie in court all the time. And we will just have to follow it and see. Now, if you weren't sure about the consequential nature of the midterm election in 2022, and of course the presidential in 2024, if you did think that those elections were important before, they are absolutely above and beyond important now. Trump got away 2 different impeachments without conviction because Republicans had the Senate. You have to understand that if control goes back to Republicans in 2022, a lot of this stuff is completely dead in the water. Now, might charges be brought against Trump before that? Maybe. I don't think so. I don't know. But I would expect Donald Trump to announce his candidacy very soon. He believes that that would be a way to shield himself from the criminal probe. Now, if you want me to be honest, if I look at my crystal ball, I expect that even if there is such an investigation, at some point we will hear there is really no precedent for charging a former president of the United States. I know I'm being pessimistic, but that's my crystal ball. But the next question becomes, would Trump announcing his candidacy do anything to shield him here? And Merrick Garland says the answer is no. One of our longtime sponsors, Splendid Spoon, is giving you $50 off. As many of you know, I am not vegetarian, but I think eating plant-based is a great thing, and I do more of it consciously. Splendid Spoon takes the work out of eating plant-based by delivering ready-to-eat plant-based meals, smoothies, and juices right to your door. Splendid Spoon fits into my day easily. The meals are in my fridge, put them on the stovetop or in the microwave, and I've got a great, fresh, plant-based meal in a few minutes. It saves me time, which is really useful right now. Whether you're vegan or you just want to add an easy, delicious way to have more plants in your diet, Splendid Spoon is a great way to go. There are great dishes like creamy mushroom and spinach noodles, coconut curry, cauliflower tikka soup. That's one of my favorites. Tons of choices. The menu rotates constantly. I've tried a lot of different meal subscription services. Splendid Spoon is great on both taste and quality. They pack so much flavor into the dishes. They taste freshly cooked. Splendid Spoon's smoothies are awesome when I'm on the go. And you'll get $50 off your first week when you subscribe at splendidspoon.com/Pacman. The link is down below.